I was elbow-deep in the transmission of Sheriff Morrison's patrol car when my phone started buzzing for the third time in an hour. I wiped my hands on a rag and glanced at the screen. 3 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize, and now a voicemail. The kind of persistence that usually meant trouble. My name is Jack Jefferson, and I run Jefferson's emergency vehicle repair out of my property in Loudoun County, Virginia. It's not glamorous work, but someone's got to keep the ambulances rolling and the fire trucks ready to respond. I've been doing this for 15 years, ever since I left the Army and decided to put my mechanical skills to use somewhere they'd matter. My shop sits on 2 acres of land I bought back in 2010, back when this area was still mostly farmland and empty lots. Now it's all planned communities with names like Meadowbrook Estates and Willow Creek Landing. I pressed play on the voicemail and heard a woman's voice, sharp and nasal. "Mr. Jefferson, this is Patricia Palmer from the Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. I'm calling regarding multiple violations on your property. Please return my call immediately at." I deleted it halfway through. The HOA and I had an understanding, or so I thought. When I bought this place, it was unincorporated land. Then about 5 years ago, developers started buying up everything around me. And suddenly, I found myself surrounded by cookie-cutter houses with their perfect lawns and their homeowners association. They tried to get me to join when the neighborhood went up, but my property wasn't part of the development, so I politely declined. Since then, they'd mostly left me alone. Mostly. I went back to work on the transmission, but my phone rang again. Same number. I sighed and answered this time. "Jack Jefferson. Mr. Jefferson, thank goodness. This is Patricia Palmer from the Meadowbrook HOA board. I've been trying to reach you all morning." "I'm aware. I'm working. What can I do for you? We need to discuss the state of your property." "There have been numerous complaints from residents about the unsightly appearance of your business." I looked around my shop. Yeah, it wasn't pretty. I had welding equipment, parts, a few vehicles in various states of repair. But it was organized, functional, and most importantly, legal. "Madam, with respect, my property isn't part of your HOA. That may be technically true, but your property is visible from Meadowbrook Estates, and our CC and Articus clearly state that residents have a right to enjoy their property without visual blight. Your storage of industrial equipment, particularly that massive welder you keep outside, is creating an eyesore that's affecting property values." The welder she was talking about was a Miller Syncrowave 350 LX, a top-of-the-line TIG welder I'd bought last year for 30 grand. I kept it under a heavy-duty cover on a concrete pad beside my shop. It was too big and heavy to move inside every time I used it, and I used it almost daily. Fire truck repairs, ambulance modifications, police vehicle reinforcements. That welder was essential to my work. That welder is equipment for my business. It's on my property and it's properly stored. Mr. Jefferson, I'm trying to be reasonable here. We're prepared to offer solutions. Perhaps you could relocate your business to an industrial park. There's a lovely commercial area near Ashburn where I'm not relocating my business. Then we'll have to pursue other options. The board is meeting tomorrow night at 7. I strongly suggest you attend." She hung up before I could respond. I stood there holding the phone, a familiar frustration building in my chest. This was how it started. This was always how it started with HOAs. They'd push and push until they got what they wanted, or until someone pushed back hard enough. I finished up with the sheriff's car around 3 and sent Morrison a text that it was ready. He showed up 20 minutes later, pulling in next to my shop in his personal truck. "Jack, you're a lifesaver," he said, inspecting the patrol car. "What was it?" Transmission was slipping. You've got about 90,000 miles on this thing. Might want to think about replacement soon. Don't tell me that. Budget's already stretched thin. He paused, noticing something on my face. What's wrong? Got a call from the HOA next door. They want me to get rid of my welder. Or relocate. Or both. Morrison's expression darkened. Patricia Palmer. You know her. Oh yeah. She called the station last month demanding we cite someone for parking an RV in their own driveway. Claimed it violated some HOA rule and that we needed to enforce it. Had to explain to her 3 times that we don't enforce HOA regulations. She wants me at their board meeting tomorrow. You going? Might as well hear what they have to say. Maybe we can work something out. Morrison looked skeptical. I've dealt with these HOA types before. They don't work things out. They work things their way. Just watch yourself. He drove off in the patrol car, and I spent the rest of the afternoon working on an ambulance that needed new suspension components. The county had 3 ambulance services, and I handled maintenance for all of them. It was steady work, reliable income, and it meant something. When I fixed a vehicle right, it could mean the difference between life and death for someone having the worst day of their life. That evening, I sat on my porch with a beer and looked out at the neighborhood sprawling around my property. Rows of identical houses, each with their measured lawns and approved paint colors. I didn't have anything against people who wanted to live like that. I just didn't want to live like that myself. The next evening, I put on a clean shirt and drove the half-mile to the Meadowbrook clubhouse, a pseudo-Victorian building with white columns that tried way too hard to look important. The parking lot was nearly full. Apparently, this meeting was drawing a crowd. Inside, I found myself in a conference room with about 40 people seated in neat rows facing a long table where 5 board members sat. Patricia Palmer sat in the center, a woman in her late 40s with blonde hair cut in a severe bob and wearing a blazer that looked like it cost more than my truck payment. She had that particular expression I'd learned to recognize over the years, the look of someone who'd found purpose in rules and control. "Mr. Jefferson," she said as I walked in. "So glad you could join us. Please have a seat." I sat in the back row. The meeting started with the usual HOA business. Complaints about someone's fence being the wrong shade of white. A heated discussion about whether Christmas decorations could stay up past January 5th. A vote on replacing the mulch in the common areas. It was mind-numbing bureaucracy at its finest. Finally, Patricia cleared her throat and looked directly at me. Now, we come to agenda item 7, the issue of the industrial operation being conducted on the non-conforming property adjacent to our community. Whispers rippled through the room. Several people turned to look at me. As many of you know, Patricia continued, we have a situation where commercial industrial activity is being conducted in a residential area. This activity includes the storage of large industrial equipment, multiple commercial vehicles, and operations that create noise, fumes, and visual blight. While this property is not technically within our HOA boundaries, it directly impacts our residents' quality of life and property values. A man in the front row raised his hand. What exactly are we talking about here? Mr. Jefferson operates what he calls an emergency vehicle repair business. He works on fire trucks, ambulances, police cars. His property looks like a junkyard. It's not a junkyard, I said from the back. It's a professional repair facility. Mr. Jefferson, you'll have your chance to speak, Patricia said. The fact remains that your property contains industrial equipment that is not appropriate for a residential area. We've had multiple complaints about welding fumes, noise at all hours, and the general appearance of your facility. Another board member, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, spoke up. We've consulted with our attorney. While we cannot directly enforce our regulations on your property, we can pursue legal action for creating a nuisance. We can also petition the county to enforce zoning regulations. That got my attention. My property is zoned for light industrial use. Has been since I bought it. Actually, Patricia said, pulling out a document, we've done some research. Your property is zoned R3, residential with commercial exception. That exception was granted 15 years ago based on the rural nature of the surrounding area. Now that this area has been developed residentially, we believe that exception is no longer appropriate. I felt my jaw clench. They'd done their homework. That exception was part of my property purchase. You can't just revoke it. The county can, if there's sufficient evidence that the exception is creating a nuisance or no longer fits the character of the neighborhood. We're prepared to present that evidence at the next zoning board meeting. So this isn't a negotiation. This is you telling me you're trying to shut down my business. We're telling you that your current operation is incompatible with our community standards. If you're unwilling to relocate or at minimum remove the visible industrial equipment, we'll have no choice but to pursue legal remedies. A woman in the third row raised her hand. I'm sorry, but what exactly is the problem? I've driven past his property. It's not that bad. It's industrial equipment in a residential area, Karen, Patricia said. It sets a precedent. If we allow one person to operate a commercial facility, what's to stop others? Today it's a repair shop, tomorrow it's a trucking depot or a warehouse. But he's not part of the HOA, another resident pointed out, which is precisely why we need to pursue this through the county. Mr. Jefferson chose not to join our association when it formed, which is his right. But he doesn't have the right to negatively impact our property values and quality of life. I stood up. Can I say something? Patricia nodded, though she looked annoyed. I understand that you all want to protect your neighborhood. I get that, but I've been here longer than any of you. I bought this property when it was nothing but farmland and dirt roads. I built my business here, and it's not just any business. I repair emergency vehicles. Fire trucks, ambulances, the sheriff's patrol cars. When your house is burning down or your kid stops breathing, the vehicles that show up to save you, I'm the guy who keeps them running. That's very noble, Patricia said, but it doesn't change the fact that industrial equipment doesn't belong in a residential area. The welder you're so concerned about, that's what I use to repair fire truck ladders and ambulance chassis. I can't do my work without it. Then, perhaps you need to consider whether this is the appropriate location for your work. There are commercial areas where your business would be perfectly acceptable and where you wouldn't be disturbing residents. I'm not disturbing anyone. I work reasonable hours. I don't make excessive noise. I keep my property maintained. You call stacks of metal and industrial equipment maintained. Patricia pulled out her phone and projected images onto a screen behind her. They were photos of my property, clearly taken with a telephoto lens from one of the houses nearby. My welder under its cover. Parts organized on shelves. A fire truck I'd been working on last week. That, she said, pointing at the welder, is what we're talking about. That monstrosity is visible from 17 different homes in our community. It's under a cover. It's on a concrete pad. It's stored properly. It's an industrial eyesore. The meeting devolved from there. Some residents spoke up in my defense, pointing out that emergency services were important and that my business served the community. Others sided with Patricia, talking about property values and neighborhood character. It went in circles for another hour before Patricia called for a vote. The board voted unanimously to pursue legal action through the county zoning board and to file a nuisance complaint. They gave me 30 days to voluntarily comply by removing the welder and any other industrial equipment from view. I left the meeting angry but not surprised. This was how these things went. HOAs saw everything as a battle for control, and they had lawyers and time and collective money to throw at problems until the problems went away. When I got home, I called my own lawyer, a guy named Tom Garrison who'd helped me with my business formation years ago. "Jack, it's 9 o'clock at night. I know, sorry, but I've got a situation." I explained what happened at the meeting. Tom listened quietly, asking occasional questions. "Okay," he said when I finished. "First thing, don't touch anything on your property. Don't move the welder, don't change anything. Second, send me all your property documentation, zoning permits, business licenses, everything. Third, I need to see exactly what your zoning exception says and what conditions were attached to it. Can they actually force me to move my equipment?" "Maybe. Depends on the specific language of your zoning exception and whether the county considers the area character to have changed significantly. But here's the thing, Jack. Fighting an HOA through the courts is expensive and time-consuming. Even if you win, you've spent thousands in legal fees and months of stress. So what are you saying?" "I'm saying we need to be smart about this. Give me a couple days to review everything and we'll figure out a strategy." I spent the next few days working and worrying in equal measure. I had a fire engine that needed its aerial ladder welded, work that required my big TIG welder. I had 3 ambulances scheduled for routine maintenance. I had 2 police interceptors that needed suspension work. My business wasn't just my income. It was a critical service for the county. On Thursday afternoon, I got a call from Fire Chief Henderson. "Jack, got a problem. Our Engine 7 has a cracked chassis. We need it fixed ASAP. It's our primary response vehicle for the North District. Bring it over. I can have it done by tomorrow afternoon. You're a lifesaver." "I'll have it delivered within the hour." Engine 7 showed up on a flatbed at 3 o'clock. The crack in the chassis was bad, a stress fracture that had propagated about 8 inches along a support beam. If it had failed during a response, the results could have been catastrophic. This was exactly the kind of repair that required my welder, the kind of work that couldn't be done with cheap portable equipment. I was in the middle of setting up when a silver Lexus pulled into my driveway. Patricia Palmer got out, along with another woman I recognized from the HOA board meeting. "Mr. Jefferson," Patricia called out, "we need to talk." I set down my welding torch. "I'm kind of in the middle of something. This will only take a moment." She walked up to where I was working, looking at the fire engine with obvious distaste. "We wanted to give you a courtesy notice. The county zoning board is meeting next Tuesday, and we've submitted our complaint. We'll be presenting evidence that your operation constitutes a nuisance. Evidence like the photos you took from someone's bedroom window. Photos taken from private property within our community. We have every right to document what's visible from our residents' homes. What do you actually want here, Patricia? Because I'm getting the feeling this isn't really about property values or visual blight." She crossed her arms. "I want you to understand that your business doesn't belong here. This is a residential community. We've worked hard to create a certain standard of living and your operation undermines that. My operation saves lives. Then save them somewhere else, somewhere appropriate." She glanced at the fire engine, and that brings up another point. You're currently working on a large commercial vehicle in full view of the neighborhood. That's exactly the sort of thing we're talking about. It's a fire engine with a cracked chassis. If I don't fix it, the North District doesn't have primary fire coverage. Not my problem. My problem is that my residents shouldn't have to look at industrial operations from their backyards. The other woman with her spoke up. We're also concerned about safety. You're doing welding, working with dangerous equipment. What if there's a fire? What if something explodes? Our homes are right there. I'm a certified welder with 15 years of experience. I follow all safety protocols. There's no danger to anyone. Patricia pulled out a folder. We'll let the zoning board decide that. In the meantime, please consider this your formal notice that we're documenting every instance of commercial vehicle repair, every use of welding equipment, every code violation we can identify. It will all be presented to the county. They left, and I stood there feeling a mix of anger and frustration. I called Tom Garrison again. They're documenting everything, I told him. Taking photos, building a case. Let them. Jack, I've been reviewing your zoning documents, and I think we have a strong position. Your commercial exception is tied to the property deed, not to a temporary variance. That means it's much harder for the county to revoke it. Plus, your business provides essential services to county agencies. That matters. The zoning board meeting is Tuesday. I know. I'm already preparing our response, but I want to try something first. Do you have contracts with the county for your work? I have ongoing service agreements with the fire department, EMS, and sheriff's office. They're not formal contracts, but we have written agreements for service rates and response times. Get me copies of those, and I want statements from the fire chief, the EMS director, and the sheriff about the importance of your services. You think that'll help? I think it'll make the county think twice about shutting you down. Emergency services are under the county's jurisdiction. If we can show that forcing you to relocate would disrupt those services, they're going to be very reluctant to do anything that could create liability. Over the next few days, I collected what Tom needed. Chief Henderson wrote a glowing letter about my work and the critical nature of having a local repair facility. So did the EMS director and Sheriff Morrison. They all emphasized the same points. My work was essential, my response time was crucial, and relocating me would create significant operational problems. Sheriff Morrison actually stopped by in person to drop off his letter. Jack, I meant what I wrote. If you have to move out to some industrial park in Sterling or Leesburg, our response times go up. When we need a vehicle fixed fast, you're 15 minutes away. Anyone else is 45 minutes minimum. I appreciate the support. Hopefully it matters. It should matter. The county can't have it both ways. They can't rely on your services and then shut you down because some HOA doesn't like how your shop looks. Tuesday evening came, and I drove to the county administrative building in Leesburg for the zoning board meeting. Tom met me outside, briefcase in hand. Ready, he asked, as I'll ever be. The zoning board consisted of 5 members appointed by the County Board of Supervisors. They met in a small hearing room with about 30 seats for observers. Patricia Palmer was already there with her contingent, including what looked like a professional consultant or lawyer. The meeting started with routine business, then moved to the complaint against my property. Patricia's lawyer, a slick guy in an expensive suit, presented their case. He had photos, property value analyses, testimony from residents about noise and disruption, even an environmental consultant who talked about potential welding fume hazards. It was impressive and thorough, and completely one-sided. Then Tom stood up and presented our response. He walked the board through my zoning exception, explaining how it was a permanent part of my property deed. He showed the service agreements with county agencies. He read excerpts from the letters I'd collected. Mr. Jefferson isn't running a random commercial operation, Tom said. He provides essential services to Loudoun County emergency responders. His business is directly tied to public safety, and his operation is completely legal under existing zoning regulations. Patricia's lawyer countered. The question isn't whether his operation is technically legal. It's whether it's appropriate given how the area has changed. When Mr. Jefferson received his zoning exception 15 years ago, this was a rural area. It's now a densely populated residential community. The character of the neighborhood has fundamentally changed. One of the zoning board members, a woman named Susan Torres, raised her hand. Mr. Garrison, what would be the impact if we required Mr. Jefferson to relocate? Significant disruption to emergency services, Tom said. His current location allows him to respond quickly to urgent repairs. Fire trucks, ambulances, police vehicles, these can't wait days or weeks for repairs. They need to be fixed immediately. Forcing Mr. Jefferson to relocate would likely add hours or even days to repair times. But surely there are other repair facilities that could handle this work, another board member said. Not locally, and not with Mr. Jefferson's specialization. He's the only certified emergency vehicle repair specialist in western Loudoun County. The next nearest facility is in Fairfax, almost 30 miles away. The board members discussed among themselves for several minutes. Finally, the chairman spoke. This is a difficult situation. We understand the concerns of the Meadowbrook HOA residents, but we also recognize the importance of Mr. Jefferson's work. We're going to take this under advisement and issue a decision within 30 days. 30 days. Patricia's lawyer stood up. Chairman Roberts, with respect, this is a clear nuisance situation. The longer it continues, the more harm it causes to the residents. 30 days, Roberts repeated. This is too important to rush. We need time to review all the evidence and consider the implications. It wasn't a win, but it wasn't a loss either. Tom and I left the building feeling cautiously optimistic. What happens now? I asked. Now we wait. They'll review everything, maybe do some site visits, consult with the county attorney. If we're lucky, they'll decide in our favor and that'll be the end of it. And if we're not lucky, then we appeal and possibly end up in court, but let's not borrow trouble. The next morning, I was working on a police interceptor when Sheriff Morrison called. Jack, you got a minute? Something weird just happened. What's up? Patricia Palmer showed up at the station this morning. She wanted to file a complaint about your business, said you're operating illegally, creating a hazard, the whole 9 yards. What did you tell her? I told her to take it up with the zoning board, which she apparently already did. But here's the interesting part. She also tried to imply that our department's relationship with you might be inappropriate. Like maybe you're getting county contracts without proper bidding or something. I felt my stomach drop. That's not true. I don't have formal contracts. I just do the work and bill the county. I know that, and I told her that. But it got me thinking. I called the county attorney's office to make sure we're covered. They're going to review our arrangement with you, make sure everything's above board. Am I in trouble? No, you're fine. It's just CYA stuff. But Jack, this woman is serious. She's not just trying to get your welder moved, she's trying to destroy your business. After Morrison hung up, I sat there thinking. This had escalated beyond a simple property dispute. Patricia wasn't just annoyed by the sight of industrial equipment. She'd made it personal. Over the next 2 weeks, things got worse. I received a citation from the county health department about potential hazardous material storage. It turned out to be nothing. I had all the proper permits and containment for welding gases and oils, but it cost me a day of work and several $100s in inspection fees. Then I got a visit from the fire marshal investigating a complaint about fire hazards. Again, everything was in order, but it was more time and stress. Each complaint, I later learned, came from the Meadowbrook HOA. They're trying to bury you in bureaucracy, Tom said when I called to vent. It's a common tactic. File enough complaints, create enough problems, and maybe you'll just give up and leave. I'm not leaving. I know, but you need to understand what you're up against. HOAs have resources and time. They can keep this up indefinitely. The Friday before the zoning board was set to issue their decision, I got a call that changed everything. It was Deputy Chief Carson from the fire department. "Jack, we've got a situation. There was an accident on Route 7, multiple vehicles involved. 2 of our engines were responding when Engine 4 had a mechanical failure. The ladder mechanism seized up while they were fighting a vehicle fire. Nobody was hurt, but we need that ladder fixed immediately. It's one of our 2 aerial units. Bring it over." That's the problem. Engine 7 is already with you for the chassis repair. If we bring Engine 4 to you too, we're down to 1 aerial unit for the entire Western County. But there's no one else who can do this work fast enough. How bad is the damage? The hydraulic system is completely shot. Needs a rebuild and probably some welding on the ladder supports. That's 2, maybe 3 days of work. Bring it over. We'll figure it out. 2 hours later, I had both aerial ladder trucks at my facility. It was a testament to the importance of my work, but it was also exactly the kind of visible, undeniable commercial operation that Patricia Palmer could use against me. Sure enough, by Saturday morning, I had a new notice from the HOA. They'd filed for an emergency injunction to stop my operations, claiming I was running an unauthorized commercial truck depot. Tom called me Saturday afternoon. "Jack, I just got served with papers. They're going for an emergency hearing Monday morning. They want a temporary restraining order to shut you down immediately." Can they do that? They can try. The good news is that the hearing is before Judge Mitchell in county court. She's reasonable and doesn't like frivolous motions. The bad news is that having 2 fire trucks at your property plays right into their narrative. Those trucks need to be repaired. People's lives depend on it. I know. That's exactly what we're going to argue. Monday morning, I found myself in a Loudoun County courtroom, sitting next to Tom while Patricia Palmer and her lawyer sat across the aisle. Judge Mitchell, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor, reviewed the motions with obvious skepticism. "Miss Palmer," she said, "you're asking for a temporary restraining order to stop Mr. Jefferson from operating his business. On what grounds?" Patricia's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Jefferson is operating a commercial truck repair facility in a residential area without proper permits and in violation of county zoning regulations. He currently has multiple large commercial vehicles on his property, creating a safety hazard and a nuisance to neighboring residents." "Those vehicles are fire trucks," Tom interjected. "Emergency vehicles being repaired to keep the community safe." "Mr. Garrison, you'll have your turn," Judge Mitchell said, but she looked interested. "Are those really fire trucks?" "Yes, Your Honor. 2 aerial ladder trucks belonging to the Loudoun County Fire and Rescue Department. They're being repaired under emergency conditions because they're critical equipment." "But Your Honor," Patricia's lawyer continued, "the nature of the vehicles doesn't change the fact that Mr. Jefferson is running an industrial operation in a residential zone. The noise, the fumes, the visual blight, all of it impacts my client's property values and quality of life." Judge Mitchell flipped through the file. "Mr. Jefferson has a commercial zoning exception on his property, correct?" "Yes, but that exception was granted 15 years ago when the area was rural. The neighborhood has changed substantially." "Has the zoning board revoked his exception?" "Not yet, but then as far as this court is concerned, he's operating legally." "What exactly am I supposed to restrain him from doing?" from continuing to operate a commercial facility that's creating a nuisance. A nuisance that involves repairing emergency vehicles. Judge Mitchell looked over her glasses at Patricia's lawyer. Counselor, I'm sympathetic to your client's concerns about their neighborhood, but this court doesn't issue restraining orders against legal businesses providing emergency services. If you want to challenge Mr. Jefferson's zoning exception, that's a matter for the zoning board, not emergency injunctive relief. Your Honor, please. My clients have a right to enjoy their property without. Your clients bought property next to a pre-existing business. Mr. Jefferson was there first. If anyone has a right to protection, it's him. She closed the file. Motion for temporary restraining order is denied. Mr. Jefferson may continue his operations pending the zoning board's decision. I felt relief wash over me. Patricia looked furious. As we left the courthouse, she confronted me in the hallway. This isn't over. It should be, I said. You're wasting everyone's time and money. You're the one being stubborn. All you have to do is move that equipment out of sight, build a fence, construct a building, something. But you refuse to even try to be a good neighbor. I've done everything legally required of me. I'm not going to spend tens of thousands of dollars changing my property to make you happy. Then I'll make sure the zoning board knows exactly what kind of person you are. Selfish, inconsiderate, and completely unconcerned about the community around you. She stormed off, heels clicking on the marble floor. Tom put a hand on my shoulder. Don't let her get to you. We won today. Yeah, but she's right about one thing. This isn't over. The zoning board's decision came down 2 days later. I was working on engine for ladder hydraulics when Tom called. Good news and bad news, he said. The zoning board decided in your favor. Your commercial exception stands. I felt tension I didn't know I was carrying drain away. That's great. What's the bad news? They added conditions. You have to implement noise mitigation measures, construct visual screening within 6 months, and limit your outdoor operations to between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. on weekdays. What kind of visual screening? Fence or landscaping to block sight lines from neighboring properties. The exact specifications are in the order, but basically they want your equipment hidden from view. How much is that going to cost? Probably $15,000 to $20,000 for a decent fence and some strategic landscaping. Maybe more if you want to do it right. I did the math in my head. It would hurt, but it was doable. More importantly, it meant I could keep my business and my property. I can live with that. There's one more thing. The HOA has 30 days to appeal the decision. Given how invested Patricia Palmer is in this, I'd expect them to appeal. Of course they will. But I was wrong. The 30 days came and went with no appeal. I started to think that maybe, finally, this was over. I was installing the fence 3 weeks later when Sheriff Morrison pulled up. He got out of his truck with a grim expression. Jack, we need to talk. What's wrong? Patricia Palmer is filing a formal complaint with the county about alleged financial impropriety and how we compensate you for repairs. What? There's no impropriety. I bill the county, they pay me. It's all documented. I know, but she's pushing the narrative that you're getting sweetheart deals, that there's no competitive bidding, that maybe there's corruption involved. That's insane. It's also effective. The county administrator is now requiring all departments to get 3 bids for any repair work over $500. Do you know what that means? For emergency repairs, we have to wait while we collect bids. It could add days to our response time. I felt anger building. She's willing to compromise public safety just to get at me. She's framing it as ensuring taxpayer money is being spent properly. It sounds good on paper. In practice, it's going to create huge problems. Can you fight it? I'm trying. So are the fire chief and EMS director. But the county's worried about liability. If they don't take allegations of impropriety seriously and something blows up later, they're exposed. This was a new level of escalation. Patricia wasn't just attacking my business anymore. She was attacking the county agencies I worked with, trying to make it so difficult to use my services that they'd be forced to go elsewhere. Over the next month, I saw the impact. Repair requests that used to come through immediately now took days while departments collected competitive bids. In some cases, I won the bids. In others, I lost to cheaper competitors whose work I knew wasn't up to my standards. An ambulance I used to maintain broke down 3 times in 2 months after the county went with a cheaper service provider. A police interceptor had to be towed because a cut-rate shop didn't properly torque the suspension components. But the worst incident came on a Tuesday evening in mid-August. Engine 7, the truck I'd repaired the chassis on, was responding to a house fire in Meadowbrook Estates when it suffered a complete brake failure. The truck rolled through a stop sign and crashed into a telephone pole. 3 firefighters were injured, none seriously, but it could have been catastrophic. The county immediately launched an investigation into the mechanical failure. I was interviewed, my work records were reviewed, and the crashed truck was examined by an independent mechanic. The findings were clear. The brake failure had nothing to do with my chassis repair. It was a separate hydraulic issue that hadn't been caught during a recent inspection by the cheaper maintenance provider the county had been using. But the damage was done. The local news covered the crash, and Patricia Palmer was quoted extensively about the dangers of having emergency vehicle repairs done by uncertified mechanics in residential areas. Never mind that I was fully certified. Never mind that my work had nothing to do with the crash. The narrative was set. Emergency vehicle repairs needed better oversight. Chief Henderson called me the day after the news story ran. "Jack, I'm sorry. The county is reviewing all of our maintenance contracts. They're talking about requiring that all emergency vehicle work be done at certified commercial facilities with specific credentials. I have those credentials. I know. But they're going to add a requirement that facilities be located in commercially zoned areas, not residential areas with exceptions. That's targeted specifically at me." "Yeah, it is. Patricia Palmer is on the county advisory board that's making these recommendations. She's basically writing rules designed to disqualify you." I felt something break inside. I'd fought the HOA, fought the zoning challenges, jumped through every hoop they'd put in front of me. And now they were changing the rules entirely to make sure I couldn't win. That night, I sat on my porch and seriously considered giving up. I could sell the property, move the business, start over somewhere else. It would be expensive and disruptive, but it would end the constant fight. But then I thought about why I'd started this business in the first place. After leaving the Army, I'd wanted to do something that mattered, something where my skills could make a real difference. Keeping emergency vehicles running meant saving lives. Every time a fire truck responded to a call, every time an ambulance got someone to the hospital, every time a police officer made it home safely, I was part of that. I wasn't going to let Patricia Palmer and her HOA take that away from me. The next morning, I called Tom Garrison. "I want to go on a fence." "What do you mean? All this time we've been defending, responding to their complaints, fighting their motions, reacting to their moves. I'm done reacting. I want to hit back." "Jack, I understand you're frustrated, but I'm serious. Patricia Palmer has been filing false complaints, making baseless allegations, and interfering with county operations. There has to be something illegal in all of that." Tom was quiet for a moment. "Let me look into it." If she's knowingly filed false reports with county agencies, that could potentially be filing a false instrument. If she's interfered with emergency services, that's its own issue, but proving it would be difficult. I've been documenting everything. Every complaint, every citation, every interaction. I have dates, times, witnesses. Send me everything you have. Let me see what I can do. I spent the next week compiling a detailed timeline of every action the HOA had taken against me, the complaints to the health department that went nowhere, the fire marshal inspections that found no violations, the allegations to the sheriff's office about corruption that were baseless, the emergency injunction motion that was denied. Tom reviewed it all and called me back. "Jack, this is interesting. I think we might have a case for harassment and possibly tortious interference with business relationships." What does that mean? It means if we can show that Patricia Palmer and the HOA have been engaging in a deliberate campaign to damage your business relationships with county agencies, you could potentially sue them for damages. Would we win? Maybe. It depends on what we can prove about their intent and the actual harm caused. The break failure investigation might actually help us. If we can show that the cheaper maintenance provider they forced the county to use led to safety issues, that's powerful evidence of harm. What would we be asking for? Compensatory damages for lost business, possibly punitive damages if we can show malicious intent, and an injunction preventing them from further interference. Do it. Tom filed the lawsuit 2 weeks later. The local news picked it up immediately, because apparently emergency vehicle mechanic sues HOA was more interesting than most county courthouse stories. I started getting calls from reporters wanting my side of the story. I did one interview with the Loudoun Times-Mirror, laying out the basic facts. How I'd been in business for 15 years, how the HOA had formed around my pre-existing property, how they'd launched a campaign to force me out despite the importance of my work to county emergency services. The story ran on the front page of the local section. The reporter had talked to Chief Henderson, Sheriff Morrison, and the EMS director, all of whom spoke about the value of having a local, reliable repair specialist. They also talked about the problems created by the new bidding requirements and the brake failure incident. Patricia Palmer declined to comment for the article, but the HOA issued a statement saying they were simply protecting their residents' property values and quality of life. The pushback was immediate. Letters to the editor started appearing, most of them supporting me. A local veterans group put out a statement backing me, noting my military service and my commitment to emergency services. Even some Meadowbrook residents spoke up, saying they'd had no idea their HOA was fighting against someone who repaired fire trucks and ambulances. But Patricia wasn't backing down. The HOA filed a motion to dismiss my lawsuit, arguing that they'd done nothing wrong and were simply exercising their rights to petition the government about legitimate concerns. The hearing on the motion to dismiss was scheduled for late September. In the meantime, I kept working, though business was down significantly. Some county agencies were still using my services when they could, but the new bidding requirements and facility location criteria meant I was losing work. 2 days before the hearing, something unexpected happened. I got a call from a woman named Margaret Chen, who identified herself as a member of the Meadowbrook HOA board. "Mr. Jefferson, I wanted to reach out to you privately. I'm not speaking for the board, just as an individual member." "Okay. I voted against pursuing legal action against you." So did one other board member. "We were outvoted by Patricia and her supporters. I think what's happening to you is wrong." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think you should know that not everyone in Meadowbrook supports what Patricia is doing. Some of us think she's taken this way too far. We don't want to destroy your business. We just wanted some reasonable accommodation to reduce the industrial appearance of your property. I built a fence. I've limited my outdoor work hours. What more do you want? Nothing. I think you've done enough, but Patricia sees this as a crusade now. She's convinced that if she backs down, it will set a precedent that the HOA is weak. So what can I do? I don't know. I just wanted you to know that there's growing dissatisfaction with how Patricia is handling this. Some residents are questioning why we're spending HOA funds on endless legal battles. There's going to be an election for board positions in November. Patricia is up for re-election as president. You think she might lose? I think it's possible. Especially with all the negative attention this lawsuit is getting. A lot of people moved to Meadowbrook because they wanted a peaceful community, not constant conflict with neighbors. After we hung up, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe there was a way out of this that didn't involve years of litigation. The hearing on the motion to dismiss went better than I expected. Judge Mitchell, the same judge who denied the restraining order, heard arguments from both sides and seemed skeptical of the HOA's position. "Let me see if I understand," she said to Patricia's lawyer. "Your clients filed complaints with multiple county agencies, all of which found no violations. They filed for emergency injunctive relief, which this court denied. They made allegations of corruption to law enforcement, which proved baseless. And now you're arguing that all of this is protected petitioning activity. Your Honor, my clients were simply exercising their First Amendment rights to petition the government about legitimate concerns. Legitimate concerns that turned out to be unfounded. Multiple times. At some point, Counselor, repeated baseless complaints start to look like harassment. We acted in good faith based on the information available to us. Did you? Or did you act with the goal of driving Mr. Jefferson out of business regardless of whether your complaints had merit?" Judge Mitchell denied the motion to dismiss. The case would go forward to discovery, which meant both sides would have to turn over documents, sit for depositions, and lay out their evidence. Tom was pleased. This is good for us. Discovery is where we find out exactly what Patricia and the HOA were saying and doing behind the scenes. Email, meeting minutes, communications with county officials, all of it becomes available. How long until this is resolved? Months probably, maybe longer. Civil litigation is slow. But things moved faster than expected. 2 weeks into discovery, Tom called me with excitement in his voice. "Jack, you're not going to believe what we found in the HOA's emails." "What?" Patricia Palmer sent an email to the other board members explicitly stating that they needed to make it so difficult and expensive for Jefferson to operate that he has no choice but to leave. That's evidence of intentional interference with your business. That's good for us. That's great for us. It shows malicious intent, and there's more. She coordinated with county officials to create the new facility location requirements specifically to target you. That could be abuse of her position on the county advisory board. What does that mean legally? It means we have a very strong case. It also means Patricia Palmer might have crossed the line from aggressive advocacy into something more serious. A week later, the HOA's lawyer called Tom to discuss settlement. They wanted to resolve the case without going to trial. "What are they offering?" I asked Tom. $40,000 and a written agreement that they'll cease all actions against your business. Is that enough? It's a starting point. I think we can get more. The evidence we've found is damaging enough that they want this to go away. Negotiations went back and forth for 2 weeks. The final settlement was $75,000. a permanent agreement that the HOA would not file any further complaints or take any actions against my property or business, and reimbursement of my legal fees. It was more money than I'd expected, enough to cover the fence I'd built and the business I'd lost, with something left over. But more importantly, it meant I could operate without constantly looking over my shoulder for the next HOA complaint. The settlement was finalized in early November, right before the HOA board elections. Margaret Chen was right. Patricia Palmer faced serious opposition. Two candidates ran against her specifically on a platform of ending the conflict with me and focusing on actual community improvements. Patricia lost by a significant margin. She was off the HOA board entirely. I heard through the grapevine that she tried to rally opposition to the settlement, claiming the HOA was betraying the residents by backing down. But most people were tired of the fight and happy to move on. The new HOA board president, a retired engineer named David Morris, actually came to visit me a few weeks after the election. "Mr. Jefferson, I wanted to introduce myself and apologize for what you've been through. The previous board lost sight of what an HOA is supposed to do. We're here to maintain common areas and organize community events, not wage war on neighbors. I appreciate that. I also wanted to say that several of us have learned more about what you do, and we're grateful for your service to the community. Those fire trucks and ambulances you repair, they protect all of us, including Meadowbrook residents. Thank you. That means a lot. If there's ever anything the HOA can do to be a better neighbor, please let me know." After he left, I stood in my shop and looked around at the equipment, the vehicles I was working on, the business I'd nearly lost. The fight had been exhausting and expensive, but I'd won. Not just in court, but in the bigger sense of proving that doing important work mattered more than arbitrary rules and property value fears. A few months later, I got a call from Chief Henderson. "Jack, I've got good news. The County Board of Supervisors is revisiting the maintenance contract requirements. They're going to create a special exception for emergency vehicle specialists with established relationships with county agencies. Basically, they're writing the rules to make sure we can keep working with you without all the competitive bidding nonsense." That's great. It's more than great. You've been doing this work for 15 years and you're the best at it. We don't want to lose that because of some HOA dispute that got out of hand. Business picked back up. The county agencies returned to using my services regularly. I even got some new clients, other jurisdictions that heard about my work through word of mouth. The fence I'd built actually turned out to be a good thing. It gave me more privacy and reduced noise transmission, which made my work easier. I added some landscaping, partly because the zoning board required it and partly because I realized my property could use some improvement. One Saturday afternoon, about a year after everything settled, I was pressure washing my shop floor when a car pulled up. A young couple got out, looking around curiously. "Can I help you?" I asked. "Hi," the woman said. "We're thinking about buying a house in Meadowbrook, and our realtor mentioned there was an emergency vehicle repair business nearby. We wanted to see it for ourselves. This is it. I'm Jack Jefferson. I'm Emily. This is my husband, Ryan. We're both EMPs, actually. We think it's great that someone local does this work." The HOA was pretty opposed to it for a while. "Yeah, we heard about that. Our realtor told us the whole story. Honestly, it made us want to move here more, not less. A community that eventually does the right thing and supports emergency services. That's where we want to live." They bought a house in Meadowbrook 3 weeks later. Emily and Ryan became friendly neighbors, the kind who would wave when driving by and stop to chat when they saw me working outside. More time passed, and the conflict faded into memory. New people moved into Meadowbrook who'd never heard about the fight with the HOA. Patricia Palmer moved away. To Florida, I heard, seeking some other community to try to control. I kept doing what I'd always done, fixing the vehicles that kept people safe, responding when emergencies happened, being part of the community infrastructure that everyone relied on but most people never thought about. One morning, I was working on an ambulance when Sheriff Morrison pulled up. He got out of his patrol car with a grin. "Jack, wanted to let you know something. The County Board of Supervisors is giving you an award next month, Community Service Recognition. They're honoring you for 15 years of keeping emergency vehicles running. An award. You've earned it. They're doing a whole ceremony, presentation, the works. You'll have to wear something nicer than those work pants. I don't know what to say. Say you'll be there. It's good for people to see the kind of work you do and why it matters." The ceremony was held on a Tuesday evening at the County Government Center. I wore slacks and a button-down shirt, felt awkward and out of place among all the county officials in their suits. But when they called my name and I walked up to receive the plaque, I saw Chief Henderson and the EMS director and Sheriff Morrison all applauding. I saw Tom Garrison in the audience and David Morris from the HOA board, and dozens of other people whose lives my work had touched in ways they probably didn't even realize. The county board chairman, a woman named Carol Stevens, shook my hand and spoke into the microphone. "Jack Jefferson represents the best of what we hope for in Loudoun County. Someone who saw a need, developed the skills to fill it, and has spent years doing essential work with no expectation of recognition. When our firefighters respond to a call, when our EMS rush to save a life, when our deputies keep us safe, they're depending on vehicles that Jack has maintained and repaired. We're honoring him tonight, but really, he's been honoring us with his service for 15 years. It was a nice speech, and I appreciated the sentiment. But the real reward was simpler than any plaque or ceremony. It was coming to work every day knowing that what I did mattered. It was the satisfaction of solving a mechanical problem, of taking something broken and making it work again. It was being part of a community, not through a homeowners association or a planned development, but through actual service and actual relationships. A few years later, I expanded the business. I bought the lot next to my property, one that had somehow remained undeveloped while everything else around it got built up. I put up a proper building, a real shop with multiple bays and all the equipment properly housed inside. I even hired an assistant, a kid fresh out of technical school who was eager to learn emergency vehicle repair. The HOA never complained about the expansion. The new board understood that having a specialized repair facility nearby was an asset to the community, not a liability. Some Meadowbrook residents even started using my services for their personal vehicles, asking if I could do regular automotive work when I had time. I still kept the big welder, the Miller Syncrowave 350LX that had started the whole conflict. It sat in the new shop, ready whenever I needed it for specialized welding on fire truck ladders or ambulance frames. Sometimes when I used it, I'd think about Patricia Palmer and her crusade to make me remove it from sight. I'd think about how much time and money and stress she'd created trying to force me out. And then I'd go back to work, because there was always another vehicle that needed fixing, another emergency service that needed support, another small way I could make a difference in keeping people safe. That's what I'd been doing all along, and that's what I'd keep doing. Not because an HOA said I could or couldn't, not because it was profitable or prestigious, but because it was the right work to be doing. Because when someone called 911, the vehicles that responded needed to work. And making sure they worked was my job. The conflict with the HOA taught me something important, that standing up for what matters is worth the fight, even when the fight is exhausting and seems endless. That communities are built not through rules and regulations and architectural guidelines, but through people doing essential work and supporting each other in that work. That sometimes the most important victories are simply being allowed to keep doing what you've been doing all along. Years from now, long after I'm gone, fire trucks will still need maintenance. Ambulances will still break down. Police cars will still need repair. Someone will have to do that work, and I hope they'll do it with the same sense of purpose I found in it. I hope they'll fight for it if they have to, the way I did, because some things are worth fighting for, not property values or perfect sight lines or neighborhood aesthetics, but actual safety, actual service, actual contribution to the community. Those things matter. Those things last. And those things, in the end, are what won out over the HOA's attempts to regulate them away. The welder stayed. The business stayed. I stayed. And the fire trucks and ambulances and police cars kept rolling, kept responding, kept saving lives. That was the whole point from the beginning, and that's how it should have always been. Sometimes it just takes a fight to remind everyone what actually matters.